Hey everyone, it's Classic DM, and this video is going to cover Pathfinder Second Edition. Three basic concepts: the ancestry, heritage, and background, which are part of the threefold way of creating your character. And it's a really interesting system that's very different than what you may be used to in the past. So let's just go ahead and get started on this right away. So if you want to follow along in the PDF, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm going to do a bunch of sketching and stuff here to kind of explain some of the concepts. Page 18 and 19, really page 19 is where we're going to talk about some of the most fundamental things of any version of D&D ever. We won't go into elaborate detail on things you probably already know, because if you're here already, you've probably been playing these games for a long time, and you're probably mostly interested in this character creation system. Maybe you don't quite have a good handle on it. Maybe the ancestry and the heritage stuff is a little confusing to you. Maybe the background system is a little confusing to you. Maybe you're used to it in another game. There's lots of different games that have these types of systems, so let's just go right into it. First of all, 6 ability scores. That's been around forever, right? Now, in first edition AD&D, I'm a hardcore old fan of that, but the ability scores and how you generate them is a little different. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of odd. How's that going to work? And then once I read it in detail and created a few characters, like, oh, this is actually quite interesting. So the order's changed. Now, over the years, the order of the ability scores has always been, it's varied up and down, but it's kind of organized into 2 basic concepts, one being kind of physical and one being mental, right? And as you could probably assume, then you're going to have strength, dexterity, and constitution. They're going to be associated with the physical traits. Well, not really a trait, physical type of ability scores. And then you're going to have what? Intelligence and wisdom and charisma are kind of mental. So these are things that kind of inside you. This is things that defines you physically as a human being. But when you create a character and you get one of the character sheets, a lot of the people from the Pathfinder community have made ones that are you can fill out. They have form fields added to the PDFs. So it's much easier to use those. I think Hero Lab now has maybe the online version of the character creator. It's really a good way to kind of have something that pre-calculates things for you as you're trying to learn it, because there is a really, really key element to this, and it's called ability boost. And this is something I want to jot down here. If you've got your PDF open, hit Control F and type in ability boost. Okay, the term phrase ability boost appears 244 times in the core rulebook. It's really, really important. And this subject matter today, which is ancestry, heritage, and backgrounds, are going to modify our base ability scores. So what's kind of right off the bat different? Well, the first thing we don't do anymore is roll the dice. So in the old days, you even see me do videos on this. You're rolling the classic way is rolling 3d6 and recording the scores, or putting them in any order you wanted to do, or rolling 4d6 and then dropping the crap number like the 1 here and come with 6, 4, 15. These things, I even did a video that you pulled out the old Mark Miller Traveler books from Traveler 5 to explain what the percentage chances are. You don't do that anymore. Everything starts off at 10. Okay? So all 6 ability scores start at 10, not at play, but at character creation. So with your strength and your dexterity and your constitution, which are all the physical ones, they're all going to start off at 10, and all the mental ones, they're all going to start off at 10 as well, which is intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Now, if you do need a more definition of what those define, nothing's changed. It's been the same way that's been since 1977. The word for strength and the description of strength has been rewritten 100 times. That's all fine. Let's go ahead and jump over now to page 20. So what really is going to modify these things? Because as we start creating the character, there's a number of things we need to do that aren't fluffy. These are steps that we need to do, and one of them is determining this ancestry. So when you're determining ancestry, which I'm going to talk about in detail in a minute here, it's going to give you this magical word I said again, ability boost. Now, this is not some kind of a chocolate drink that you drink when you have low vitamin deficiency at age 90 or something you see at the grocery store, okay? Ability boost just basically means you're going to add some numbers to one of your statistics or ability scores. The word ability boost, the way I understand it, is always associated with +2. So it's not a pool of 2 to 3 or 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're just adding 1 here and adding maybe 2 here, or the cost increases when you get higher. Like in 3.5, there's some of the skill stuff. You take a skill that's outside of your class, it costs more to raise it. So anytime you hear or read the phrase ability boost, not chocolate milk, +2. So you're going to get a total of 4 of these over the course of generating your character, and they're going to come from these concept. You hear people in forums already talking about A, B, and C. It's not a liquor store, right? A, B, and C. This is standing for ancestry, which we've got written up here. So we're just going to put A and C for that. And B is coming for background, okay? And C, obviously, is class. So All we're going to talk about today is these two, because there's actually three things in here, not just two. Now, it's convenient to say ABC, that's great, cool, whatever. We'll talk about classes. I'll break down every single class in the game in separate videos. Every class deserves its own breakdown. So let's just get this cleared off for a second and go back a step. So you said, classic DM, Mr. Elliott, Mr. Cannon, whatever you want to call me, I don't care, Misha the Sled Dog. You tell me I'm going to get 4 of these, and they're going to be +2 each. That means I'm going to get +8. And if you're good at math, you're already starting to think ahead, right? You're going to play caster, you're going to play, a sorcerer, you're going to play a bard, you're going to play, a finesse rogue, whatever you're going to do. You can start seeing that I'm going to have an 18 somewhere, but nothing can start off higher than 18. Okay, so you're not going to start with any 19s or 20s or anything like that, but you're going to have a really strong series of values that you'll be able to apply to them, but it's not a complete free-for-all. You're not just sticking them wherever you want. It's all dependent upon what your theme of your characters or where they come from. So let's move on to that. Why don't we jump ahead here and jump to what maybe page 20. I think page 20 is the one we want to be to next. Let's go to that. Yeah, we're already there. So you see here in this left-hand column, you heard me mention this other video the first day. I just want to really briefly. These are the things that will modify those ability scores as you're creating the character. Ancestry, background, and class. Today, like I said, we're just going to talk about ancestry and background. So each ancestry provides ability boosts and sometimes an ability flaw, which would mean a deficiency. Like if you're playing a dwarf character, you may have a deficiency to one of your ability scores. Your ability character's background provides 2 ability boost. Okay, so remember, each time we say ability boost, we're talking about 2 of these. So you're talking about +4. Right? Now, how they're distributed changes based on what you're doing. So that part gets a little trickier. And then lastly, we talk about the class. The class provides an ability boost to the main ability score associated with the class, but we're not going to talk about that today because all the classes are very, very different. Now, one concept that's kind of remained true since 3rd edition, OGL, D20, whatever you're going to call it, 3.5, Pathfinder 1, is this table 1 called ability modifiers. So the ability modifiers, and you'll see a lot of checks in the game are using your ability modifier, and you're going to see the range. It's the magical number. Once you hit 12, from 12 to 18, you're going to get between +1 and +4, as you can see the table. So it's like, I think it's 12 to 13. 12 to 13 is, 12 to 13 is +1, and then each one of these are increments of 2. 14 to 15 is +2. 16 and 17 is +3, +2. Sorry, crap handwriting today. I'm trying to go too fast. Let's slow it down a little bit. And then obviously 18 is +4. So there's no 1803, 1833 strength. None of that stuff is very simplified. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now anything below that, obviously you get down, when you get down below 9, you're going to have penalties. So right off the bat, with all your characters' ability scores start off with 10, you're not going to have a situation where you rolled a 1 and a 3 and a 1, and you start with a 6 charisma and have a -2 or 3 penalty to your character. So you're going to kind of start off with an idea I like, which is you're a heroic character. Now, you're not straight 18s, but you've got pretty darn good ability scores. It's pretty well balanced. So how does that actually work? How do we actually do this? And what does the word ancestry have to do with anything? So now you understand that the ability modifiers, which once again, over the course of the game, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, based upon your stats, you're going to keep track of these on the character sheet as ability modifiers separately from the actual number. Because at a glance, oh, what's your ability modifier? Oh, my charisma's really high, I've got a +2. When your strength's really high, you got a +4, 18 strength. And your constitution, you only got +1. You may later on be doing a reflex, fortitude, saving throws. Those things may affect it as well. So the ability modifier is the same chart used for every single one of the ability scores. So if you see the chart that's on page 20, that's in the second column, let's just highlight it here real quick for you, right? It's table 1-1, the first table in the whole game. You're going to jot these down, but you do this at the end, because once you go through the whole process of creating the theme for the character, picking probably their race, their background, their ancestry, okay, which is the new word for race, and sub-races are pretty much called heritages now, a much more of a broad view, not as, the word race is kind of wonky in the modern day. People don't usually use that word anymore, so, but there's a lot of depth here. And then background is kind of like what happened, where you came from, what kind of lifestyle, what kind of world did you grow up in. So all those things together are going to be you're going to be tracking and adding to your ability scores while you're going through this whole process of designing this character. You're going to get to pick and choose all these thematic elements, which are really, really interesting to you. So you've got an idea for some kind of barbarian, and he's going to be from up north, and he's going to come from this one country that's got a lot of island chains around it and a frozen northern wasteland up here, and you want to be really awesome with two-handed weapons. And once he was a guard, and he also served in the military. He's really, really smart with lore and tactics, and you have this idea for this cool, awesome Viking guy with braid hair and a mustache, and he's using a two-handed sword, or whatever your big dream is, okay, or something I'm a big believer in. You're going to get to make that guy come true by making all the systematic steps and choices yourself. You aren't randomly rolling these things up. You're going to get to pick these things yourself. So your idea for your character, now if you're someone who can't come with a good idea for character, have one of your friends do it. Just read through all the different ones and pick it. So let's just take a look at it. Remember, this is all going back into A, B, and C, and we're not going to talk about C today. We're just going to talk about ancestries and backgrounds. Why don't we just go ahead and jump to page 22 and 22, 23, where the big spread is. This will give us a good snapshot of all the ancestries and the classes. So you've basically got these 6 ancestries, okay? And it's not Ancestry.com, okay? It has nothing to do with your great-grandmother or someone who was in World War II in the Depression era. Ancestries are pretty much, and I hate to say it, they're pretty much, if you can't remember it or you're playing another edition of D&D, it's like races. And there are going to be heritages underneath this, which are kind of like a sub-race. And we'll get to that in more detail. For example, okay, you're playing an elf. And the old day you play a sun elf. So the sun elf is a heritage. You start off, you're playing an elf, and then you have a sun elf, and that's going to give you some additional skills and feats and all kinds of monkey business, right? So this idea of picking the main ancestry and then choosing the heritage essentially means that for all 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heritages, there are 5 choices, except for humans. They only get 4. Because humans, this is where the half-orc and the half-elf appears. When I first opened the book in my first video, I was like, I didn't even know it was hidden in there. Once I read it, I was like, oh, that's stupid. I didn't realize that. I should have read the book further, but I was just too excited. So let's take a look at this diagram here on the right. At the first glance, it's just giving you a really good, strong idea of like what the basic themes of these races are. And you probably already know this. I'm not going to read it to you, but at a quick glance, they've done a really, really good job in the book of giving you this at-a-glance information by highlighting stuff. Let's just say you're going to play a dwarf, right? Constitution and wisdom ability boost, remember, is going to be free. Dexterity and intelligence is going to be free for the elf. For the gnome, you're going to get constitution, charisma free. They're basically trying to say, this DNA strain, more likely than not, has these type of great ability scores innate in them, which is basically kind of like what races were in first edition, right? First edition D&D, that is AD&D. So it makes sense. Now, when you get down to human, they decided not to do it here. They get 2 free ability boosts because humans are always considered a jack of all trades or very diverse, and that's pretty much true in the real world too. You can have someone 6'6" next to someone who's 5'1", and they can both be the equal strength. I mean, it's crazy what can happen with the human DNA chain, right? So humans, the half orc and half elf, are kind of a subset of the human. They're considered a heritage. So once you start the game and start creating a character, you have this idea. You want to think about which one of these races are you going to want to play. And remember, there's 5 more hidden underneath that. It's not just I'm playing a gnome and that's it. You can play a deep gnome, or I'm playing a dwarf. You can play a dwargir, however you pronounce it, things like that. So let's just go ahead and jump into the Ancestry section in the book too. Before we do that, you can also take a peek down below. You can see the classes. There's 12, okay? So the 12 classes of the game, we'll cover that in another video. So you can peek ahead, and if you're a min and maxer kind of a person, you can say, hey, listen, if I play, you're thinking I'm going to play a dwarf warrior and I want to be a champion. Well, the dwarf is going to have constitution, wisdom, free, charisma flaw. If you play a gnome, you want to be a gnome champion, you're going to have a little bit of a strength flaw. If you see his ability boost, which is always going to be +2, and ability flaws, which are probably going to be minuses. I believe they're -2 as well. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. But if you want to play a dwarf cleric, I mean, you can see where the wisdom and the starts to line up. The main ability score for the cleric obviously is wisdom. Same thing for the druid, and you can start to see, well, if you can get some synergies going, and that's true of any game, but you really don't need to focus on that too much because you get a lot of flexibility along the way. It's not like they're cajoling you into EverQuest 1 style classes. I know some of you guys hate all my MMO references, but I sometimes like to use those because I'm trying to draw people from other gaming worlds into this world because this is the best world ever. So that's pretty much kind of at a glance how your options begin. There's a lot more to these than what you're seeing here. So before we do anything, let's just go ahead and get right down to the Ancestries themselves. Now, the book does a really good job of saying, here's how to make a character. Do step 1, step 2, step 3, all these kinds of steps. But when you read it out of context and you haven't got a grasp on what an ancestry or a heritage even is, you'll probably be a little confused. You'll be like, I got to record all the stuff, and there's all these this PDF has got so many empty blocks everywhere. It's a little overwhelming. If you look at the character sheets that were made by the Pathfinder Society, they're really clean, really simple and clean. So don't get too bogged down with that. Read through these sections here to get a basic sense. Step 3, select an ancestry. And you'll want to be able to pick up on these kind of details here. Why are you picking an ancestry? Well, it's going to give you a lot of information about your character that you probably didn't even realize. And you're going to get to make the choice about what they're going to be like and where they come from, and that's going to affect all kinds of minor details. And let's just go ahead and jump down to an ancestry. Let's just get on with it and not lollygag around. So you get this beautiful, magnificent Christmas scene, winter festival thing. This is the ancestry stuff. Starts on page 30, 32, 33. Okay, look right off the bat. When you pick an ancestry, okay, which is going to be something along the lines like, say you pick a dwarf, right? You got 4 pages for the dwarf. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's an ancestry, okay? Or you pick an elf. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's an ancestry. So who were your ancestors? They were elves. Who were your ancestors? They were dwarves. And then there's the gnome, right? 4 pages for the gnome. Very simple. And then you got a goblin. Okay, it's Pathfinder. They have goblins all over the place. We be goblins everywhere, right? You got 4 pages for the goblins. It's very streamlined. Halfling, 4 pages for the halfling. Cool cupcakes, bro. And then you got the human. But the humans get a little twist because you get the half-elves and the half-orcs in here too. But they get 4 pages, and then you can see there's feats and all kinds of monkey business there. And then boom, before you know it, then you're right on the backgrounds. So you're like, oh gosh, so how does the backgrounds tie into the ancestries? Well, let's go back to the beginning here and take a look at this, right? So when you are picking the ancestry, that's right, stop wigging out PDF. Don't you just love that? There you go, that calmed it down by slapping it. You're going to need to, all these things are going to happen to you. You're going to pick your base core hit points are going to be established, not by your class. So you're not going to be rolling D8 as a ranger and D10 as a fighter like in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or D4 as a magic user. You're going to have hit points based upon your ancestry, which is kind of like race, okay? And it's going to define things like how tall are you? What's your size? How much does your speed work? Well, you're like, wait a minute. If I want max hit points, I should pick the most sturdiest race possible. But those are going to be modified yet again when you pick your class later on. So don't over-fixate on it. And one thing you'll notice right off the bat is every single one of these entries, as soon as you flip to one of these ancestry pages, is this right-hand side. Right off the bat, if you're just browsing for telephone numbers, take a look at this right-hand frame. This is going to give you all that information right there in one spot. Oh, that's right, dark vision. The dwarves get dark vision. That's going to let me see in darkness and dim light just as well as you can see in bright light. Through your vision in darkness is black and white. So even in pitch black darkness, the dwarf as an ancestry, no matter which heritage you pick, is going to be able to see basically in the dark, even black and white. It's like ultra vision, if I remember correctly, from a long time ago. So the base hit points, as you heard me mention right here, the hit points are determined as a starting point by the ancestry. In this case, dwarves start off with 10. Now you go look at the next one over, elves only start with 6. And in the old days, that was something that the thief and the assassin got, and the magic user and illusionist were D4. Now Pathfinder 1, I'm not sure. I love Pathfinder 1 books. I never got the chance to play it as much as some people have, so I'm not as versed on it. If you know the answer to that stuff, feel free to put a comment in there and educate other people and help out. But you also notice other details. These ancestries are very diverse. So let's look at speed. Now in the old days in AD&D, a lot of people have come from my website are AD&D players. So you hardcore Pathfinder guys are like, why does he keep talking about AD&D? That's because most people have been evangelizing D&D are old school guys like me. So speed is how fast you can move each time you spend an action, which is called stride. We need to take a moment and talk about that. So in the old days, you remember that your movement rate would be like 12 inches, which is really 120 feet. And every inch number in the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide was, they would say, oh, you can move 12 inches in a melee round, which is 60 seconds, broken up into 10 6-second segments. You're like, what? I even did a video once trying to make some common sense out of this by using normal human runways. So in the Pathfinder 2e, they call it speed. Okay, and you take an actions in a combat situation where, like, okay, it's my turn. I don't have a grid here or anything. It's my turn. I want to attack. I got this evil magic user over here, or whatever. Evil wizard. This want to attack. You're playing a warrior or whatever, a barbarian, a fighter, and you're going to attack this sorcerer. Right? Those are proper class names. You have how much you can move in a per. Each time you spend an action called stride. And stride is basically saying a movement. Now, there's a lot more complexity to the stride things, but you get 3 actions in your turn. And I don't want to go into a lot of details of the mechanics, but I just want to explain this really quickly. So it's not just some base movement rate number. So you're playing, it's your turn. The person sits next to you, his turn doesn't happen yet. He's waiting to see what he gets to do. It's your turn. You're looking at the table. You're figuring out what to do. You reach over, grab your mini. I'm going to move. I'm going to spend my first action point moving to here, and then I'm going to swing twice, and I'm going to try to kill. So I'm going to move to here, and then this guy's here, and I'm going to swing once, then swing twice, and introduce a MAP, which is a multiple attack penalty on my first attack and second attack, or maybe I'll use an ability to counter that, or I'll try to knock them down or stun them. All kinds of neat stuff goes on. That's where it gets very, very tactical really quickly. I dare say that the level of tactical stuff that's happening in this game is going to make it where if you pick bad choices, you're going to get wiped out fast, which to me actually is very exciting. A number of the people in the Facebook groups that I'm a member of have been commenting on this. So one fellow who's been playing at Gen Con with tons of people, and some other people have been playing with groups right away, a lot of savvy P1 players who played in the playtest. You can get killed really quickly in Pathfinder 2 if you don't know what you're doing. That adds value to all your decisions, which then heads all the way back to which ancestry and heritage you pick. So it's kind of like reverse engineering the combat decisions you make. You aren't just running forward and say, I swing my sword, dude. Roll d20. I get 2 attacks for a melee round. Okay, that's great. Now you're actually kind of picking actions you're going to do. You're going to end up having, conditions and status effects applied to you that are going to be things that last so much time. So I want to make sure I mention speed, because this speed is determined by your ancestry, okay? It doesn't matter about the heritage. Sorry, I'm saying it like a little kid, aren't I? So you're like, okay, I need to keep track of that. So everyone gets a turn. The turn is only 6 seconds, right? So you can have 3 or 4 people at the table playing together, right? Yeah, say you have 3 people playing, the DM, and the DM's got some ugly NPCs on the table. In 6 seconds, tons of movement can happen, and attacks can happen, and spells, and things like that, and attacks opportunity. I mean, the whole fight in 6 seconds is almost like it would be in the real world if there's a street fight. It isn't going to be like Final Fantasy or something where someone comes and attacks him, I move half rate, he moves half rate, I disengage, he moves here. You're not going to have this kiting kind of phenomenon going on. You're going to have a lot of things happening really quickly. People are going to be running up and going 1, 2, 3 attacks in one turn, in 1 6-second. Not really a segment, it's called a round or your turn now. So the turn number is really, really important because you get these 3 actions you could do, and some things cost more points than an action. In fact, I should probably do a video that explains the action system. But I want to make sure I mention that because when you're reading through the ancestries, you need to take that in consideration because different ancestries have different speeds. So when you look at the dwarf, this guy's got a 20-foot speed. Well, let's take a look at this. The elf has a 30-foot speed. That's 30% faster. That means they can move much quicker. And it kind of makes sense. They're going to be much more agile, they're more graceful, they're lighter and heavier, they don't short-legged like a basset hound, they're not running around at slow speeds, it may not be as powerful. Their ability flaws is constitution. It makes complete sense. Let's take a look at some of the other ones here. If you look at a gnome, they're going to have ability flaw of strength. Their movement, listen to me, their speed's 25. It's in between the dwarf and the elf, but they have greater hit points to start off with. They have 8 because a little bit more hardier. And you go look at the goblin. This guy has 25-foot speed, kind of the same as you saw just right there a moment ago. 6 hit points, not as much physical stature, resiliency, muscle, bones, and femurs involved, right? When you go down to the halfling, it's a small size entity. You got 6 hit points. 25-foot speed. So far the elves, the fast mover. Humans 25, and you can get into half elves and half orcs, and things get a little bit different on them there. So if you're someone who really wants a lot of mobility, if you want to play an elf, elf fighter, an elf champion, you're going to have to trade out. Do you want movement? It's movement and engaging, and then using some of your abilities to help you charge into battle, plus your regular heritage movement rate. Does that really make a big difference to you? You need to think about those kinds of things. That's where the decisions you make about the character become much more interesting, not just from a power gaming perspective, which I'm not necessarily advocating. All right, so that should cover the ancestry element. So you've got these 6 heritages to choose from. Each heritage has 6 ancestries to choose from, and each ancestry has 5, except for humans, 5 heritages. That's confusing. Sounds like a subdivision, right? What are they? Let's just take a look at them real quick here. So the dwarf has 5. Ancient Bloody Dwarf, Death Warden Dwarf, Forge Dwarf. You flip to the next page, Rock Dwarf, Strong Bloody Dwarf. If you read the details in here quite finely detailed, you can see that some of these are very familiar to you from a long, long time ago in some of the other versions of the different types of games. They've added some new inventive ones that are like Guardians of Tombs and things like that. That's really, really cool. They even have deep gnomes in here. You could be an Arctic elf or a cavern elf. These are the heritages. Now you say to yourself, well, what does the heritage actually do for me? Well, each one of these is going to have special things about them that makes it more interesting for you. Let's just look at the Arctic elf real quick here, right? You dwell deep in the frozen north, have gained incredible resilience against cold environments, granting you cold resistance equal to half your level, a minimum of 1. So if you're level 10, you're going to get 5 for your cold resistance. Treat environmental cold effects as if they're 1 step less extreme. The system uses a lot of steps. It's like a 5-step proficiency levels and things like that. Extreme cold becomes severe and so on. So, you may think the theme is cool, but it's not just a la fun, glitzy thing you're choosing. You're choosing something that's going to actually have a technical, mechanical impact on how the character plays. So this is the strength of the game. The pairing of the mechanical with the thematic is extremely interesting. You can go over here and be a Whisper Elf or a Woodland Elf or a Seer Elf and all these kinds of abilities. Like, look at the Seer Elf. You can cast Detect Magic cantrip as an arcane innate spell at will. Okay, the cantrip is heightened to a spell level equal half your level rounded up. In addition, you gain +1 circumstance bonus. And when you read through this, you're like, circumstance? What is that? And you got to be patient because there's just so much stuff they need to mention along the way, but you won't pick up on it later. But before you know it, by the second page, you're like, that sounds kind of cool. The Woodland Elf kind of sounds like my deal. This is someone that's been living in the forest and deep jungles. I want this to be like a jungle-oriented, wild, kind of a crazy elf. He's got quick climb. They have some abilities like take cover and things like that. So when you pick the ancestry and heritage, you're going to get an ability boost. So the ability boost comes from which one you pick. You get the ability boost, right? And then you get an ability flaw. So let's just take a look at these here, right? The ability boost for the dwarf is over here in this right-hand column. It's just like, look at the menu, right? Really well done. Constitution, Charisma, and there's a free one. And then you look at the elf, Dexterity, Intelligence, and a free one. Ability flaws, Constitution. So as you're building the character, you're kind of jotting down, like, okay, I started off with, Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. And let's say we start off as 10, 10. Well, we have to. We start off at 10, 10, 10. And right off the bat, we picked this Arctic elf, right? We're going to do this Arctic elf. So as soon as you pick, and you're starting off with 6 hit points. When you get to the class, it'll change. As soon as you pick this heritage, which is one of the subsets of the ancestry, you're going to see that you have an ability flaw, Constitution. So this is going to drop down to 8, but you're going to have ability boost of Dexterity and Intelligence and a free one. So if I'm not mistaken, this goes up to 2 to 12, and Dexterity and Intelligence, this is going to go up to 2 to 12. So I believe that's how it's done. Someone please correct this for me, because when I was counting it up and making sure I understood completely how the system worked, that the ancestry and the heritage, some of them are giving you bonuses and some of them are not. So the way that I understand it is that it will tell you in that right-hand column which ones you get. It's not saying either or. You're getting both. So technically, the elf is getting 2 ability boosts and an additional free one. Now, that's something I'm not 100% sure on yet. There's an additional free one. I don't think it would ever allow you to put it again in the same stat. You might be able to put it in here. So you could, if I'm not mistaken, do that. Someone tell me if I'm right on that. I would really love to know, because I don't even want to bounce. There's no gamers in town that are playing yet. I got to try to convert people. Everyone's still playing 5th edition. So those types of things are going to affect your ability scores. Now later on, you're going to need to pick a background, which we're going to talk about in this video, and the background is going to give you 2 ability boost. So it looks to me like so far you're getting, in some of these, not races, but some of these ancestries are giving you ability boost. It's probably a choose type of situation. I didn't pick up on it when I was taking notes. I made tons and tons of notes. I didn't just wing this, right? I made tons of notes on the stuff when I've been reading through it. I don't remember it saying one or the other, but that's probably how it is. I'll need to verify that. Anyway, let's move on from there. So you have essentially 5 heritages for each ancestry, which means if you've got 6 of these ancestries and then 5 heritages, you almost have 30. The humans have half orc and half elf underneath it, so it's a little bit different. Now, another element is you're getting feats. So this is something that's kind of interesting. If you play 3rd edition and 3.5 of D&D, everyone knows how important feats can be. A lot of times the feats in the old days, they're always associated with the class itself. Now you're getting ancestry feats. So, but you're getting to pick one. So at first level, you gain 1 ancestry feat, and you gain an additional ancestry feat every 4 levels after that. You'll find there's a lot of things like that. So that means basically between levels 1 and 3, 4, 1 and 17, you're going to have a total of 5. 5, once again, a recurring number. They must have been Rig Ribbon fans. So you're going to get a feat at first level. You're going to get one at 5th, 9th. What do you got next? 13th and 17? Nothing at 20. So there's nothing happening at 20. So these are going to give you some additional feats. These, you haven't even picked a class yet. These are things that come with your ancestry. They're ancestry feats. So in the example a moment ago, we were saying, hey, let's play this Arctic Elf, right? Let's go back to the Arctic Elf. It didn't matter whether you picked Arctic Elf or Cavern Elf or something like that, or you picked the Whisper Elf. The ancestry feats are not related to that. The heritages are giving you specific bonuses, usually to skills and things like that. So let's just take a look at the ancestry feats for the elf real quickly. You can do this yourself, but let's just take a quick snap at them. You can see right off the bat, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to choose from, but you can only pick one. Now, as you level up and get higher and higher level, you can still go back and pick up a lower level one. So it doesn't mean that when you hit 5th level, you can only take either Ageless Patience or Elven Weapon Elegance or whatever the devil's called. You can still go back and say, you know what, I want Nimble Elf and I want Forlorn, I want Elven Weapon Familiarity, no matter what. In fact, you could go all the way up to level 17 and pick all of the level 1s if you want to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's actually 7, so you wouldn't be able to do that. But you get 5 of the 7. But obviously, when they design a game, some of these are actions. You'll see at 9th level, you see Elf Step. You see that little pip next to it? Looks like a Rubik's Cube with a piece pulled out. That means it costs you 1 action. In combat, you get 3 actions. Some things cost more than others to pull things off in the game. So later on, you're getting things, they're kind of like an active ability. You're doing something, but it's costing you an action to do it. In this situation, you move in a graceful dance, and even your steps abroad, you step 5 feet twice. So that's pretty big. Usually in 3rd edition, 3.5, and I'm pretty sure it isn't here. When I get to the combat mechanics, I'll figure it out. Usually you get like a 5-foot step you can do without provoking an attack of opportunity. In this situation, it looks like you could take this elf step. You can use 1 action and go twice as far because you're the fastest moving ancestry of the whole game. So we'll see what happens when more books come out, right? Some of them have prerequisites, like the expert longevity at level 9 requires ancestral longevity. So you may have to pick up something else. Ancestral longevity, I believe, is level 1. Yes, level 1. So you must be at least 100 years old. You've accumulated a vast array of lived knowledge over the years. During your daily preparations, you can reflect upon life experiences to gain a trained proficiency in 1 skill of your choice. So you can see there's a lot of options. It's better than shopping on Amazon, dude. So it's there's a lot of cool things you could pick. You're really going to be able to tailor the character to have all kinds of things you can do in combat, things you can do in downtime, which is a concept I'm still getting my head wrapped around, things you can get to do while you're exploring, things you can do that breathe life into your character. It'll make you bond with your character. I hate to say it. It's not just going to be a tactical killing machine on the battlefield and encounters anymore. You'll now have a character you really care about, and you don't want them to die. So you'll be picking these kinds of decisions and trying to play the game, and then you'll be in a situation where you play with your friends, and you're going to pick up synergies that work with your friend. Like you have a friend that's playing, like a rogue, an elf rogue, and someone else is playing a dwarven cleric. You're picking things to benefit each other, like medicine and skills like that later on. So the building of the character, I can't wait for someone to come up with something that's an online builder. You could kind of maybe mess your character up if you forgot to give yourself the additional ability boosts like you're supposed to. Like, for example, even me, like 2 days of reading the book, just a few minutes ago, what was I just said, right? I said, can someone help me give me the answer to that? When I choose an elf, when I look at the ability flaws, the ability boost, it says dexterity, intelligence, and free. Now, what does that really mean? Does that mean I get all three of those, or I just get to pick one or the other? When you go to the beginning chapter of the book, here's what it says, right? So this lists ability scores you apply ability boost to when creating a character ancestry. Most ancestry apply ability boost to 2 specified ability scores. So that's what it says. That's what it sounds like it is. Plus a free ability boost you can apply to any other score. Oh, so I was right. Maybe I should read the book and take better notes. You know, when you get to be my age, the notes are they're just a mess. So that's really, really cool. So when earlier we were making our character, we could have added +2 to 3 different sets of ability scores. So that's really neat. As you can see, yes, making ability scores higher is cool, but then you're picking which ones you want them to be in. You know in the back of your head that some of the saving throws are going to be modified by the ability scores. You also know the skill system from a long time ago is going to be in place for particular skills like stealth and things like that. And spot and listen, which is renamed completely different now, are going to be you're going to be making D20 rolls all the time against these things as checks against DCs or difficulty checks. So all these things kind of interrelate. The mechanics and the themes work together. Okay, I'm getting too evangelistic. Let's get on with this now. So besides the hit points and size and speed and ability boost, the ability flaws, you're going to get languages. That's cool. That's fantastic. You know, in some adventures, the languages make a big difference. It just depends on how your DM is and how he sets things up and what kind of adventures you're going to do. You're going to get traits. There'll be special traits you're going to get. The heritages I mentioned have explained pretty well now. It's basically picking like a sub race in a way. The ancestry feats, we went over that as well. So you get a lot of cool things just from picking an ancestry, and you really haven't even picked a class. Now, you probably already have a class in mind, okay? But that's really, really, really neat. So in summary, okay, you're going to get a maximum of between now, level 1 and level 20, you're going to have this pool of feats to work from. Let's go back and look at elf. I'm not a big elf fan. I'm going the wrong way. I'm not a big elf fan, but let's just pick the elves again, right? So you're going to, yeah, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. Yep. That's 13 feats just for your ancestry that you'll be able to pick. You're only going to get 5 of them. So you're not going to be able to get them all. And some of them have prerequisites. So you really got to plan that out. I think that's really, really cool. I really, really like it a lot. So the thematic, you've got to jot this down. So you have thematic and you have mechanics. Creating a character is mathematical. It affects gameplay. It affects percentages. It affects what you can do. But it's also an expression of who you are as a player and what you think is cool, right? So you have a double whammy on happiness happening making a character this way, but there's more to it than that. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about the backgrounds. And then we'll wrap this thing up, and we'll do classes some other time. But there's some elements to the background stuff that can be a little bit tricky. So the background stuff is on page 60. Let's just go ahead and flip through all these, all the different ancestries. You can see all the ancestries. Go through and read them all. They have really good descriptions. They have cool pictures for them. I'd love to have a cupcake. But lastly, I did want to mention this. The human. This is something that's very tricky. The human doesn't have as many of the heritages to choose from. They only have 4. And so you have these, the first 2 are this kind of crazy ones. They have ethnicities, right? Which we've seen census forms that make us ask what our ethnicity is for whatever reason. So you can be a half elf, you can be human, a half elf, or a half orc. So when you get to the heritages on this page here, where this guy walked across the savannah with a bunch of fish in a basket or something, or water baskets, you are half elf or half orc. So it becomes a heritage, and then you either have a skilled heritage or a versatile heritage, and which is really kind of tying to the whole theme that humans are a jack of all trades. So, you know, the humans they're never ones that have a lot of flaws, don't have a lot of bonuses. They're a good all around fantastic, I keep wanting to say race, ancestry to play. The heritages aren't as different as they are for the demi-humans or whatever you want to call them. So if you're playing a dwarf, you can play all these different types of dwarves or different types of elves or different types of halflings, different types of gnomes. When you play a human, you're a half elf or a half orc or a human, and you'll have a couple of heritages to choose from. But the feats are still there for you. So we were going to jump ahead to And they have the thing they do differently here is they take the half elf and half orc ancestry feats and they combine them. So that's kind of interesting. Instead of splitting them out and making humans look like, wow, they got a 6-page spread and everyone else only got 4, that they just made sure they stayed within the rule, right? So the human is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the longest spread because of the half elf and the half orc. It doesn't mean it's better. It's just very different. You'll see things like orc superstition and orc ferocity and orc sight. If you're playing a half elf, that probably doesn't really apply to you. They have them broken down here. You'll see there's half elf ancestry feats. There's not as many. And right here, excuse me, right here. And then there's half orc elk. That would suck. You get shot by a hunter. So I love the system. I think it's really neat. There's a lot of personality here. If you're a real power gamer, you can find all kinds of things to dig into. You also notice things like the reactions are hidden here, which is this little return arrow type of iconography here. You start thinking about actions. You'll be intrigued now to learn how to actually use some of these things in the game system as a whole. So let's go to backgrounds. Okay, so far, remember in the very beginning, I said you're going to get a total of 8 ability boosts. So your background gives you 2 as well. So you're like, wait a minute. So I've got an ability boost from picking an ancestry, which is like picking a race. And in the elf situation, we got 2 plus a free one. So we were strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, if you like Van Halen. And we start off with 10, right? I'm not going to build an elf. How have I got myself into this situation? I'm not going to build an elf. But the backgrounds are how you grew up, where you came from. It doesn't mean your job. It's not something from GURPS or anything like that. But they're really interesting. And let's just take, okay, here's a cool one. Let's take Bounty Hunter, for example. Bringing in law breakers lined your pockets. Maybe you had an altruistic motive and sought to bring criminals to make your street safer. Or maybe the coin was motivation enough. Your techniques for hunting down criminals transfer easily to the life of an adventurer. Choose 2 ability boosts. One must be strength. One must be to strength or wisdom, and one is a free ability boost. Okay, so when you read that language, you got to be very careful. Ignoring all the other ancestries, let's say we chose a bounty hunter, right? It said it must be strength or wisdom. Doesn't mean strength. It means I could pick +2 in strength, but I can't also put it in wisdom. But I get a free one. So you could do this because you only get 2, right? So backgrounds. Backgrounds get 2, and they have stipulations. They're like reading a contract. Jump over here to the artist, okay? The artist, the greatest passions on this page. Whatever form it takes, eventually might help you inspiration, blah, 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 blah. Choose 2 ability boosts. One must be dexterity or charisma, and one is a free ability boost. So if you're playing a bard or something right out of the way, or playing a sorcerer, you could have been an entertainer, and you get the higher charisma to help kind of fuel your blood-oriented type spells. So you have flexibility in the backgrounds to modify your ability scores. Now, one thing they did here I really liked. So many role-playing games. I've bought so many of them, played 50% of them because I love collecting the damn things. There's only 4 pages for these. So it's not, I mean, you can just see the drivethrurpg.com, you can just see the D20 OGL community going nuts with this. People are going to be creating hundreds of thousands of one-page heritages. They're going to make new ancestries. They're going to make new heritages. They're going to make new backgrounds. There's going to be, it's going to be more than barkeeps and bounty hunters and criminals and entertainers and emissaries. People are going to add all kinds of things. But they got some good basics here. They kind of remind me of some of the GURPS things, if you remember that. Things like gladiator and hunter and hermit and fortune teller. But I'm not taking anything away from Steve Jackson games from the 70s and 80s. What I'm trying to tell you is that when you're creating your character and you're trying to define who they are, in my mind, I was trying to take my characters from the classic DM show from the AD&D that ran through the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief and the Glacier Rift of the Frost Giant draw. I was like, let's see if I can build Mercedes. So I tried to replicate her as a level 1 version of her, and I found that I could actually pretty much do that. The only thing was a disadvantage. I had to kind of transfer her Ket nationality and learn some of the lore for the Inner Sea world, which meant I had to get a map and start reading all the books. That was fine because I picked them up in the Humble Bundle. So getting back on task here. When you pick the background, you're going to get ability boost, okay? So last one you're going to get isn't going to be in the class. So remember in the very beginning I said ABC, it wasn't a liquor store, right? It is in Florida. So you're going to have inadvertently rolling D20s. So the ancestry, the background, I suggest you pick these to work together based upon your theme, and also take into consideration the mechanics. Like, oh, great, I can rate charisma. That's going to be awesome for my barbarian. I mean, try to pick something that's going to make you better, but balance that up, whatever appeals to you. And then, so the background and the ancestry and also the heritage. So it's like, ancestry and really heritage. So you don't pick an ancestry and then never pick a heritage. You end up with just a heritage. Oh, I'm trying to write too fast. And just a background. And then ultimately just a class. So it really is HBC, which is like some crappy bank in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. So, don't be confused. The ABC thing is a great little acronym for someone to start getting the things underground to get the games kicked off. So I really like this system. I think it's neat. So by the time you've done this, and then when you go into the class section of the book, it's like, okay, what kind of cool classes are there? Well, there's a lot of them, right? And we're not going to do a class video, but they're going to have an additional ability boost as well. So once you're done with all that, you're going to put down your final ability scores. And if none of that makes any sense to you, go back to the earlier chapter of the chapter 1, which I said was so fantastic, really well done, because they do a sample, someone builds a dwarf cleric for you, and they walk you through step by step. In fact, let's see if we can find that for you. Where is that at? There we go. Sample character building. I don't know why it does this. I guess it doesn't like it. I guess it doesn't like the crappy music in the background playing, which is creepy dungeon sounds. So this is Adam building a dwarf character. I'm not going to read it to you. So go back to page 30, and you thought you watched my crazy long-winded video. You're like, okay, so I understand, dude. You said ancestries, they're kind of like races. Heritage are like sub-races. Background's kind of like what walk of life, job, profession, career, world, upbringing you did. You'll figure out the classes yourself. That's fine. You're going to keep track of the ability boosts along the way. They're part of your decision-making process. And so when you get done with all 3 of those things, then you record your final ability scores, and then you can go through and figure out what the actual ability modifiers are going to be. And you're going to have proficiency ranks to figure out and all that kind of stuff too. So, and there's going to be innate lore. There's all kinds of things like that you're going to have to figure out. So to keep it simple, don't get overwhelmed with all the going back and forth. This is the one thing about the character building system that starts kind of crazy. Here's like a thematic idea about it. So here you are, you're a cool gamer dude, right? With your hat on, whatever you look at, your cell phone in your hand, you're like, cool, man, I'll make this awesome character. You got this big dream in your mind. You make this bearded dude. He's going to be like a Slayer in Warhammer with a mohawk, right? He's going to be double axes, run around. He's going to be a barbarian with axe in one hand and an axe in the other hand. He's going to run going, give me death. And he's going to run no shirt on, killing people, and whatever. So your big dream, that's a terrible sketch. Man, that's the worst one I've ever done. So you have this big idea. You want to build a Slayer like in Warhammer Online or whatever you're charactering. So then you're going to pick that ancestry, and then you're going to look through the ancestries and say which one of these ancestries really kind of lines up with the theme that I want to kind of capture. The ancestors want the big, beautiful Christmas picture. That's like chapter 2. It starts page 33, 32. So like, which one's really going to work? Are you an ancient, blooded dwarf? Heroes old, shrug off enemies' magic, and some resistances manifest in you. You gain a call, ancient blood reaction. Now, that sounds like something a Slayer would have in Warhammer, right? Or a Death Warden dwarf that's protecting tombs. A Forged dwarf is something deep down either living in a desert environment, a high heat environment. Then you have like a rock dwarf in the rocky depths, strong-blooded dwarf. That might work cool too. So, you're going to have these ideas. You're going to pick that ancestry. Then you're going to pick this heritage. And along the way, you're going to modify all those ability scores, right? Modify all those, keep modifying them, and then you're going to pick your background and say, well, I want my guy to be a gambler because he's a nut and spends all his money. And then you're going to go and pick the class. And this whole time you're going back and forth to those ability scores and modify them. So when you're finally done with everything, then you can put them down as the final numbers, and then you actually can go through and get all your ability modifiers written down, and then you can start picking all the things along the way that are going to make your character feel even more personalized. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video. A little long-winded. I tried to do it fast, but I think this concept is really cool. I really love it a lot. I hope you have a lot of fun with it. I can't wait to learn more about it. I'm still learning myself. I don't know all the answers. Still learning, but I did want to share this because I thought some people might be able to get a handle on it, because as I was going through this, I was like, this is a really cool system. Even though there's some jumping back and forth between the two things, and you're doing things like, oh my God, what feat should I pick? I haven't even picked my class yet. Don't worry about that kind of stuff. Just jot down some of the cool ideas. In fact, Eric Mona had said this in one of the Facebook groups. People who hadn't really played Pathfinder 1 are picking what sounds cool. People that played Pathfinder 1 were getting bogged down because they're overthinking everything. So, whatever interesting to you, if you're a 5th edition player, don't overthink it. Just pick what sounds like your cool theme. None of it's going to stink. That's the good part. None of it's going to be dumb. None of it's not going to be useful. All of it's really interesting. It just adds a lot of specific personality with a lot of usable things that are going to help you later on in the game. All right, hope you had fun with the video, and we'll do a series of class videos probably next, and then we'll just try to go through the whole book. And hope these things are helpful. If you have any feedback, definitely leave me feedback, good or bad. I like it all. Thumbs up, thumbs down, doesn't matter to me. Whatever you want to do, I'm doing these things just for fun. And but if you have something you want to point out that I missed, man, please do it, because I try to engage with people all the time. In the most friendly, professional way possible. And if someone says narky stuff, I try to be cool about it, because this game is awesome. I want people to have fun with it. I want people to share their knowledge. And this early stage of everyone trying to learn how to play it together, even when we never met each other, is a really cool breakthrough, because you're not going to be able to GM your own game unless you know the rules. And when you're playing the game, because it's so tactically charged in combat, you're going to get dropped if you don't know what you're doing really quickly. You're not going to charge into combat and take on a cluster of minions and live through it. So learn these rules, share what you've learned about the rules, and have a lot of fun. And if you got any suggestions or feedback, let me know. All right, we'll talk to you later, man. See ya.